Okay, let's get into the visit weekend, guys, because it was a big one last weekend and one commit, and I do think you're going to see more come out of that weekend. Christian Jones is an interesting one because he was here last weekend. He's supposed to visit Oklahoma this weekend. Told their own Brian Munson that this is Omaha Westside 4-star linebacker, that he may not actually make a decision in the summer, that he might extend things out to the fall for official visits. And that actually really surprised me because you just see so few prospects really have the leverage to do that now, because coaches say, look, we only have X amount of spots. You've got to be a really high-ranking prospect on a recruiting board for a team where they say no matter what, you can do what you want to do. So if Jones extends this out in the fall, that will be interesting because there's just not a lot of prospects that will do that right now in recruiting.
He's the number one player in the state, ranked number one player in the state.
And the consensus rank in the industry rankings.
Yeah, some people would say Chase Lofton's the number one, and he'll be here in Lincoln this weekend. And Chase Lofton's a tight end, and he is dynamic. This is a big one. And Sean, Rob, it's interesting, his final list, and this could be purely coincidental. It's Florida State, it's Texas A&M, it's Missouri, it's Nebraska. All four have very strong NIL programs. Nice job by Chase Lofton. Very wise, the Millard South tight end. Boy, you watch his film. Whew, that he's dynamic,
and he's visited Florida State, A&M, and Missouri on officials.
Yeah. NIL, strong NIL schools, real strong.
And Jones has gone to Auburn, Nebraska, and he'll head to Oklahoma, assuming that takes place this weekend. That's the plan. But yeah, the on three has been pretty, locked in as Lofton as their number one prospect. And I can tell you, I believe Nebraska thinks he's the number one player in the state. The ranking on Jones, all the services have him all over the board. Rivals has Jones as high as Carter Nelson's ranking. He's a 58 in the top 100, which is extremely high. On three doesn't have him even in the top 250. So the ranking on Jones, I think a lot of people just don't know how to project him because his film in high school is more edge and he's more of an inside backer.
Yeah.
So I think the projection on Jones is the key. But the track numbers are off the chart. He runs a 10.8, 10.9. He throws a shot put 56 feet. So he's got freakish athletic numbers. It's more, how do you project him?
Sean, you mentioned about players not usually having that kind of leverage to draw things out into the fall, especially if you're not high enough on a team's board. With Nebraska, you just mentioned that they probably see Lofton as a better in-state prospect. Is Christian Jones high enough on their board for Nebraska to wait it out, especially if he goes and takes a fall visit to Wisconsin, like Brian Munson reported?
I don't know. I have a hard
dicey
because it's a position that you've got a lot of other guys in the works. Dawson Merritt could be in the boat. Will Hawthorne from Iowa, who's essentially a clone of Christian Jones.
Yeah, now it's interesting, Sean, because we're talking about outside and inside linebackers. Dawson Merritt's a pure outside. The kid from Iowa is more of an inside, right? But Christian Jones, we don't really know right now.
The position description that Will Hawthorne told us that Nebraska's told him to play was the exact position description they've told Jones.
Okay.
And they're almost identical. Hawthorne placed in the 100 meters in Iowa. So he's a really freakishly athletic kid as well. And same heights and weights and variables. And he camped at Nebraska. So there's some things going there. And will he visit this weekend? That's kind of what we don't know, if that visit is for sure going to happen. Now for Nebraska this weekend, obviously Jamarian Parker, Chase Lofton coming in. They've got Michael Riles coming in, who's a 4-star edge out of Port Arthur Memorial in Texas. Another Polynesian player, and that's been a theme really the last 2 weeks. The number of Polynesian players that have visited campus, that they've offered at camps, has been through the roof. This is another interior offensive lineman, Houston Kalihana Torres, out of St. Louis High School, home of Dominic Raiola, will be here. And to me, it's not a surprise, Sip. You've got a Polynesian offensive line coach with a Polynesian quarterback at Nebraska now. Their relationships and the recruiting ties are deep in the Polynesian community. We've seen more Polynesian players come to Nebraska's campus in this stretch than I've ever seen in history.
Right. You've seen a lot coming to camps. They have some on the roster already. You mentioned a couple. Now you have Sefo Lefotu. You have Keona Davis. We have it listed as Keona Wilhite, whatever. There's two names. But Terrence Knighton said that Lefoto's critical in this conversation. If only because he wants him to kind of lead Keona Wilhite. By the way, Knighton loves Keona Wilhite. That
was a late take.
Late take, but he said watch him. I mean, he's an edge guy. So, yeah, the Polynesian thing, I guess the best way to put it is the coaches feel like they play with a harder edge, a hard edge. And we've seen it at Nebraska. Me and Sean have talked about this. You saw it at Nebraska on the offensive line, Rob. You might be a little young for. You remember Dominic Raiola?
I've heard of him. I've read stories.
Tony Finoti.
Saw black and white film though. I couldn't remember it.
Junior Taguai.
Yeah, that's what
Tony Finoti.
Those guys had a serious hard edge. I mean, Dominic Raiola was one of the hardest edges I've ever seen, and Finoti was kind of more low key. But I've heard the tales in practice. You know, if you weren't practicing hard and Finoti saw it, that's not. You know, how big was Finoti, Sean?
He was 6'3", maybe.
Well, I was gonna say 6'4", about 340, and his hands were as big as this computer. I mean, that's not the guy you want on your bad side at all. Those guys were great players too. I mean, they were tremendous.
Sean mentioned Junior Taguai. Like that's one of the few players that I was like legitimately intimidated by. Like he just had that look in his eye. Like, look, man, I don't want any trouble. Just go ahead. You're good.
No, 100%.
He was a fast. I used to do these 10 questions with a Husker back in the day on KRNU, and I interviewed Junior. And one of my questions was like, name me one song that makes you sing out loud every time you hear it. And then he told me the song. It was the Electric Slide. and then my follow up like, okay, can you give me a verse of it? And he busts out in the full like, you can do it. It's electric. Boogie boogie. And I'm like, this is freaking awesome.
You're kidding.
Yes.
Wow. I can't top that.
I have those tapes at my house somewhere, but he sang the Electric Slide song for me.
You're kidding.
It was amazing.
That's the same guy that like was do you remember when he screamed at the media corps as like he was like shouting at us about something? I can't remember what it was, but he was like mad, and it was when they were on the outdoor practice fields, like by Cook Pavilion, and he was walking out and he just started like barking at us, and I was like, hey, whoa, look at me. Sybil wrote that.
That's interesting, Sean. You got to dig that up, by the way.
Yeah, I used to, and Josh Brown, the kicker, sang "Free Fallin'" by Tom Petty.
Did he really?
Barrett Rude sang me a song. It was like, it was an old song from like the 70s.
I could see Barrett.
City of Lights.
Never heard that song.
City of Lights. City of Lights. It was really good. I'll toot my own horn because I was like 19 years old doing these interviews. And they're in a box of tapes in my house.
I am startled by this conversation. I had no idea. I've never had this conversation with Sean.
The Electric Slide.
Yeah, I didn't even know that had words. It does.
You can do it. Okay. You don't know that song?
It's electric.
I don't.
Abby's like, who the hell are these freaks?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. On the visit weekend.
Sean.
Talk some ball.
Hey, Sean.
Sorry,
are we talking 10 to 15 visitors?
Yeah, 10 it's a very fluid number. Like we just confirmed a new one. Jeremiah Jones out of Kentucky, who's a 6'6", 205-pound athlete. We list him as a receiver, but he could play defense. Kind of a Quinn Clark. And you're seeing they love the Quinn Clark, Braylon Prude type bodies.
Yeah. Okay, wait a second. Jeremiah Jones, interesting.
But he's a receiver. But kind of a Quinn Clark-ish type player that can. I mean, you've seen Quinn Clark over there now, and it's
hard to miss.
It's hard to. I mean, Quinn Clark might be one of the prettier looking just frames of an incoming player you'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but it looks like did you get lost on your way to Austin, Texas, or something? That's what he looks like. But you need more of those guys. You really do. And this staff understands that. I think previous staffs understood it to a point, but this staff is big on length, levers, long levers, speed, and that's what you're seeing more of here.
And then a lot of commits will be here. Jackson Carpenter, Pierce Muberry, Caden Vermas, and every player gets one official visit.
Okay.
And so for a lot of these guys, this is their official. I mean, official visits don't really happen in the season anymore. Some will happen later. Like Caleb Benning didn't take his until this last May.
Okay.
But everybody gets their one, so their family and even like siblings get to come down and so that you get a good weekend out of it as a family to see Lincoln